So a lot of parks, they don't turn into ghost towns because they're, parks are a monument to kind of the natural world. So nature flourishes, and a lot of parks are historically themed or have certain important landmarks. But you see in a lot of parks, the path to progress gets halted. So they turn into ghost towns of what they previously were, and we have a bunch of those sorts of ghost towns in the Big Cypress. Carnstown, there's a gas station there, but there used to be a train station. Used to be something much more kind of a more vibrant community there. Same thing with Miles City. Miles City is now just an interstate exchange with State Road 29, and there's really no remnant of whatever that was. It's just kind of a dot on the map. And Pinecrest, there's still a community of Pinecrest for sure, but it's not back in the day, and it probably saw its heyday in the 60s. It was a bustling frontier town, and the Big Cypress was on the path to being developed, and a big jet port was moving in, and that was just real estate was exploding, and that same kind of explosion of development potential was snuffed out when it became a preserve, and all that land speculation kind of fizzled on the vine, and in a positive way, because the ecosystem and the swamp were preserved. If these towns had been able to develop, they would have eventually, just like on the East Coast, morphed into one another. 75 years ago, Miami and Fort Lauderdale used to be little separate coastal hamlets that are now starting, they're all just one big monolith of terracotta roofs and the spaghetti of highways. I'll never forget driving with my family, driving in, and my boys they were shocked when we got into the Everglades, into the East Coast, the urban area. It was just this incredible maze and of bridges that all swirled around in each other, almost like a spaghetti bowl of roads that all merged into one another, and that shocked them, or it was, they were in awe seeing that. So in the preserve, even Ochopee, where I work, the headquarters is sort of a ghost town, and especially during the coronavirus, the past, good couple weeks, months, there's just not as many people in work. We're starting to have people matriculate in, but the guidance is if you can telework, and people are just coming in on a spot basis to do certain field activities. But rewind the clock a month ago, and really nobody was in work. I happened to be in there because I was assigned a field assignment, and it just has a real Wild West feel to it in general, like on a frontier. I think the preserve, in some ways, that frontier element, that it became a preserve, has been retained, even though maybe some of that energy and the communities that were on that frontier have now been reclaimed by nature. Anyhow, I feel there's a frontier nature and to it, and I often feel like I'm out there by myself. And with the coronavirus, that was certainly the case. So I was in work, and I heard somebody walk by the hallway, and I thought, and it wasn't somebody I recognized, but I did recognize them. And I don't know, then a couple moments later in the morning, I started hearing a voice. It's like, I think I know that voice, but it wasn't a voice that was It was from the distant past. And then I walked by, and it was down the hall, actually, right next to my office. There's kind of, I'm in an old motor inn, so there's separate offices, and that's good for social distancing, right? And I saw it was David Moody. I hadn't seen him in, well, really a good 15 years. Although I did see him 5 years ago. He and his family were driving through South Florida. They stopped and we got a photograph. David and I got a photograph. And David and I we've always stayed in touch, maybe on an annual basis. Now it's easier to do through social media. But we, 15, 20 years ago, I'll never forget, that's David worked. I was his co-supervisor, that kind of sounds. Anyhow, you have to be brave to have a co-supervisor, and David was. And I remember he came down here at the start of his career, and he very much, even then and now, he kind of has a Slim Pickens vibe to him, and his voice isn't as high as Slim Pickens, but there's something about he has a Southern gentleman quality, and he was working on a fire assignment, kind of a seasonal fire assignment, but he was really interested in doing more than just fire. He wanted to be a resource steward, and he was interested in all things. So I remember it was he wasn't on a horse, but it was kind of in the spirit of the Old West. He kind of rolled up, and we got to know each other a little bit just in passing, but he kind of rolled down the window, and he almost like, someone riding up on a ranch, rolled up the window and said, "Hey, could you use some help? Because I'm ready to work." And he, really made it known that he was available. So he was able to work his way in through my my boss at the time, Ron, and we got him on, and he was able to work with a number of people in our team, but in particular myself, and we just had so many adventures in the swamp. It was in the spirit of the frontier. We were really embarked on some really exciting projects, and we weren't prospecting for gold, but we were looking for benchmarks. And these were just going into the old reports, finding out where the benchmarks were, and then going out and finding where they are in the field. And some of them were in the most obscure places, and in the process we dust off these old historical names of, I don't know, like Pepper Hammock, there were, and it was just going through the maps. It was like finding gold, and every time we found one of those benchmarks, it was just so satisfying, because we then had an elevation that we could shoot the water level, or establish points for measuring water level on either side of the road, and that became very important. We wanted to understand how the roads and the canals were impacting the ecosystem and how we could visualize that. So and David came with just a great outdoor pedigree. He was a fisherman, he was a hunter, he was a naturalist. He just saw we had a surveyor come through, and they had a pretty complicated assignment, and really the only way to do it was to do an overnighter or two, and David just kind of escorted them out in the field, and he was able to kind of, I think, he's almost like a master outdoor chef, or chef in general. He makes a really good pound cake. He made a name for himself, and I would say my wife makes a very good birthday cake, and if I had to pick two cakes that I want, be that pound cake and my wife's birthday cake. Anyhow, and David had an extraordinary, I think he had a very close bond to nature, a close bond to his family, and but also a very close bond to community. He's done things even since he left, and when he was down at the old choppy ghost town, frontier town, he would do things that promoted a sense of community, I think, in a very positive way, whether it was cooking or... He was always interested in what other people were doing. He was always curious about life, and that's what his song is about, embarking on the beginning of a career and the possibilities. And there's a little anecdote in the beginning where, yes, he played football in high school, and that team spirit really resonated with him then, and I think it still does now. But he also then started to understand that maybe life's more like a haystack, and you know, there's not an easier way, but you know, you have to enjoy life too. And I think David brings a lot of enjoyment to life, to family and friends. And of all the things that are important to David, I think it's family. And he's a family man through and through. And I just happened to know him in that point in time, early in his career. And I think he always says, Bob, in his kind of semi-slim picking voice, you really got me off on the right start. I learned so much. And I always think, wow, well thank you, David. But I learned so much from David. And just his optimistic outlook in life, and you know, him being able to, whatever happened, kind of, you know, always, you know, adjust. And you know, we're in the field, it would start to rain, he'd read the clouds, he'd say, Bob, we shouldn't go that way, we should go this way. Anyhow, he was just real fun to work with, and a very memorable part of my career. And so when he came down here, I was working on those videos, and we caught up. He in true David style, he brought down some fresh melon, he cut it up, and he just knows how to pick out a good melon from the roadside stand. And I thought, well, I'll brush off the dust to David's lyrics, his Going Away song, and put it to video. And then I was able to show it to him while I was down here, you know, maybe as a keepsake. Anyhow, good times, good memories, and yeah, the Ochopee ghost town. Not much has changed. I said to David, not much has changed since you left. Many of the core group is still here, and so it is it has that ghost town vibe, but it was like walking back into the past for him. And how fortunate, even though that, you know, sometimes you go back to a place and everybody's gone and it's different, but that was nice that we were able to connect when he came back, and many of the same people and places, even though it's been 15, 20 years removed. Anyhow, campfire shanty is that's what you think about when you think back, you know, around the campfire.